Okay, so the whole story of our setting up the North Wales Pilgrim's Way began, of course, when Jenny and I had an opportunity of a sabbatical to take the Camino from Le Puy to Santiago in the summer of 2009. So we started off at Le Puy and, of course, ended up in Santiago. And the whole route, that's the route we took. It took us 3 months in extremely hot weather, and it was a quite transformative experience, as many of you will be able to attest. And then, of course, our passports from doing that. What happened was, after that, I was asked to give a presentation in St. Asaph Cathedral. I was Dean of the Cathedral at the time, on this experience of the Camino. And so Jenny and I gave this talk in January 2009 to a full cathedral. And at the end of it, Jenny got up and said, well, you know, North Wales has got a long tradition of pilgrimage. And would there be anybody interested in re-establishing a route, certainly from across North Wales, from Northeast Wales to Bardsey Island? And a little group sprung up saying yes, and got together, and some of the ramblers joined us. And of course, they're extremely skilled in knowing how to manage local authorities and way rights, you know, rights of way. And so we spent the year of 2010 planning a route. And in 2011, we walked it for the first time. Well, actually, there were a couple of variations we walked, and this is the one we finally settled on across North Wales from Basingwerk Abbey, which is in the Dee Estuary. And the whole route is about 13 days of walking. It's quite hard work. There's some steep climbs in it. It averages about 12 miles a day, and you can never guarantee the weather in North Wales, of course. But it is the most stunning experience. From day one, you get phenomenal views across the Welsh landscape, up to the coast, from the coast of Lancashire, up to Morecambe Bay and beyond. Is just completely stunning. At the very beginning, early on, we got some grant funding for a local sculptor to work with some youngsters who were not in education or training to create a ceramic mural of the whole thing. And he took them out to various places on the Pilgrim's Way, and they designed their own little bits of it, which all got put together in this rather wonderful 21-foot long image. I don't know if you can see down here, St. Winifred's Well, there's a little white thing floating in it. That was an extraordinary story, because one of their teachers who took them to it to see that well had explained that she'd lost a child. She'd had a miscarriage, and she'd gone there and thrown a blossom into the pool as a sign of memory and mourning for that child. And the lad who designed that thing put the little blossom in the pool. It was a very touching thing. There are all sorts of other little things actually from their own quirks. I think there's a picture of David Beckham in here somewhere as well. But they chose a lot of the features that you'll see across North Wales on the Pilgrim's Way. And it really is a stunning thing. And that happened very early on. We're very glad we managed to get that grant to authorize that. And a bit later on, there was some more money found for someone to put a couple of rather nice wooden sculptures on the way. This is going towards Conwy. This is the left-hand one is above the Alyn Valley, which was home in the 18th century to many very famous Welsh poets. And although he looks very much like Saint Jacques with his hat turned up, I think this is meant to be a poet sitting on a pile of books looking out over the valley. And then at another place not far away in the grounds of Hafodinos Hall, which is near Llangyrnu on the route, there's this pilgrim pointing out of an oak tree, an old oak tree. It's rather dramatic. So we managed to get our funding also to set up a website, Taith Pererin Gogledd Cymru, or North Wales Pilgrim's Way. If you just put in North Wales Pilgrim's Way, you'll get to the website, which gives you all sorts of information about the route. It gives you route descriptions and maps, how to plan a walk, bits on places, updated news, because sometimes bridges get washed away and you've got to take a diversion. So we try and put as much information, current information as possible, and a gallery with photographs and so on. Well worth a visit if you want to contact us, or if you want to have a look at what it might be like and what you might need. And we also got some funding for 2 artists to work with primary schools all the way across the route to come up with designs for stamps for a pilgrim's passport. And they came up with some lovely images, and which we use there. They're all the way along the route, mostly in churches. COVID has made it somewhat restrictive trying to get hold of them, but it is still possible to get them. We're just shortly going to introduce a completion certificate, which will be available at the National Trust Centre Port Sunt at Aberdaron. Hopefully those will be there shortly for people who wish to pick up a certificate to commemorate having done all or part of the walk. We were quite surprised how many people took this up without us doing much promotion ourselves. It was in a book by Emma Wells of British Pilgrim Route. She featured it in there. To our surprise, a friend said, oh, he was given a history of the world in 500 walks. And there's even a paragraph on it in there. We have no idea how it got into that. And there's a manual written, a Kittiwake manual written, which we didn't know about at the time. It's actually been superseded now. And various other books and articles as well. A priest from America came and walked on it and wrote a lovely article about it in The Living Church, which is a church magazine for Episcopalians in America. And a little church, pilgrim church of Llangalenin, high above the Conwy Valley, on the front cover. And on the left there, there's a couple of pages from a blog of a pilgrim who did it a couple of years ago, 2018. He's put them on the website, and they're really delightful images. And in 2018 as well, we were asked if we could guide a group of youngsters from Liverpool on a project called Pilgrimage into Adult Life, which was run by Claire Henson Davis, who's not only a choreographer, but a theologian. And she'd been running this project for 2 years with people talking about aspects of adult life, whether it's training, getting a job, handling tax and money, relationships, all sorts of things. And finally ending up with 4 days of walking down Llyn Peninsula. And here they are on the boat across to Bardsey Island. It was a lovely, lovely time with them. And these kids, they probably hadn't walked more than 1.5 miles before in their lives, just down to the local shop or to the club or something. And so they survived it incredibly well. It was a great, great event. And I wrote a guidebook for it a couple of years ago, which is selling very well. It's available on Amazon. It was self-published. So that is brilliant. So last year we had planned the 10th pilgrimage, but obviously cancelled it due to COVID. So where do we start? We start in Basingwerk Abbey. Here it is. Basingwerk is founded a 12th century abbey, and of course knocked down by Henry VIII, unfortunately, but it is still rather a splendid site, and it's in Greenfield Valley Park now. And the Greenfield Valley, as we lead up to St Winifred's Well, was very early industrial revolution remains there, tin mining and lead mining, with a series of ponds and pools which drove belts and industry of one kind and another. And there's still some industrial archaeology all the way up that route. It's a lovely walk. There's a nice park around Basingwerk Abbey as well. And as you walk up, very shortly you come to St Winifred's Well, which is still a great pilgrimage destination for the Catholic Church. It is quite a thing. You wonder, why did it survive Henry VIII? Well, Lady Margaret Beaufort was his mother-in-law, and she sponsored the place, and he wasn't going to argue with her. So it has actually survived, whereas the abbey just down the road failed to survive. Now there's Church of St. James in Holywell, which is just next to St. Winifred's Well. And it's interesting, when we did the Camino, somewhere in, I can't remember where it was in northern Spain, we saw a map of various pilgrimage routes coming across Europe, ending up at Santiago. And one came across North Wales. And of course, St. James was on that route. So this ancient church as well was named after Santiago. And one of the first stops where you can get, well, I hope you still can now, get a cup of coffee, is Pantasov Priory. And there was, over the last few years, the cafe has taken off. And one of the brothers there had taken a course as a barista course. So you can actually get a cappuccino from a Capuchin monk at Pantasov Priory. Actually, I think Brother Martin might have moved on, but you can still get a very good cappuccino there and some food. And there's a lovely and delightful Stations of the Cross, which you can follow up onto the hill behind the priory. From then we pass along, and getting up onto the top above Holywell in the first instant, you get phenomenal views, and the first inkling of the mountains of Snowdonia in the west, as well as I said earlier, looking up the coast from Lancashire to Morecambe Bay. And on top of a hill, which was obviously a lookout point at one time, this astonishing tower, which is where we often find ourselves gathered around having lunch on the first day of our walk. Unfortunately, lots of trees have grown up around it, so you don't get the views from it anymore. It's certainly an extraordinary monument to go and visit. It's only a few yards off the route, and then you return to the route to head down to this extraordinary pillar. It's the tallest wheel cross, 10th century wheel cross in Wales, covered in Celtic knot tracery. It's in the corner of a field. It's called Mynachwyvan. It really is worth a visit, and we've got a stamp there in a little bird box by the gate that goes into the field, where you can see it. And shortly after that, we divert up through some woods and across farmland to descend to the delightful village of Llanasa. Must be one of the prettiest villages in Flintshire, and the church there of Llanasa Parish Church, and taking its name from Saint Asaph, who was St. Kentigern's protege, who St. Kentigern came down from Glasgow, or that region of Scotland, into Wales and set up a community at Llanelwy, which is where the River Elwy, a little village on the River Elwy, or a little community on the River Elwy, which is where St. Asaph now is. And St. Asaph followed Kentigern in leading that community. There are various places named after St. Asaph around there. There's Pantasov we've just seen, Llanasa, and St. Asaph itself. And from there we go up to a place called Agop, you can see it on the map, above Trelawnyd, which is the second largest Neolithic mound after Salisbury Hill in the UK. It's a very ancient site, an extraordinary viewpoint from up there. And no one's quite sure of why it's there, but it is. It's a massive mound, and from there you descend to the village of Trelawnyd, and that is in another standing cross in the churchyard of Trelawnyd, another ancient cross there. That is a view from just below, just before you reach the top of Agop, a view west. The mountains are shrouded in mist in the past, and just to the right, there's a glimpse of the sea there above Prestatyn. And from Trelawnyd, you go down, you see that on that little map, it says airfield. Well, Gail, that Camino isn't the only one that has large dinosaurs. For some reason, around that airfield, there are some large dinosaurs as well, which usually take people by surprise. But there are some fabulous views again on that route, all the way down through Tremechion. That cross in the bottom right-hand corner is the churchyard cross there, another similar one, and to the one in Trelawnyd. They're lovely little carvings, so really worth a visit and a look. And then some scenes there on that day's walk. There's always a place in the top right-hand corner. That's where we stop for lunch with the views out across the Vale of Clwyd. It's particularly beautiful. And that's where we stop for lunch, and then we go down and walk above St Bino's Retreat Centre, Tremechion. St Bino's was where Gerard Manley Hopkins spent many years and wrote that wonderful bit of a poem. Lovely the woods, waters, meadows, combes and vales, all the air things wear that build this world of Wales. And again, there are some of the views from that region over the Vale of Clwyd. That snake in the middle picture there is the A55 winding its way across North Wales. And there we are again having our picnic lunch in the sunshine. And then on from Tremechion, we go to St Asaph Cathedral at the end of our second day's walking. And we usually try and get there in time for the afternoon evensong, if we're lucky, and sit at the back and just relax with evensong. From St Asaph, it winds down. This is quite a lot of little country lanes on this particular stretch, past the little Kevin Church, where you can go up and wonderful views there and go inside that little church there, have a cup of coffee. Across then onto farmland, down through glorious countryside. To Llansannon, which is another pretty village. Really worth, that's where we stopped for the day. And the last few years, we've been met with an evensong in that church as well. They greet the pilgrims extremely nicely on this route. Then to Gwytherin, which is tucked out of the way. It's now a privately owned place. It's not generally open to the public. It's more a kind of venue centre for people, art centre, when the owner manages to open it up. But Gwytherin was where St Winifred had ended up as the head of the women's section of a monastic community there. And St Winifred was the origin of the story of Winifred's Well near Holywell. It was reputed that her head was chopped off by a Welsh suitor, and her uncle St Bino managed to put it back on again. And no one quite knows what this story is about, but I suppose losing your head to a Welsh prince might sound different if we said it today. But anyway, that's where she went. And I think one of the Brother Cadfael books had the story of how her bones were then taken to Shrewsbury, stolen from Gwytherin and taken to Shrewsbury Abbey, so they could make that a pilgrimage centre. And there's that poet again, sitting on his bench. Then from Llangyrnu through Havodinos Hall, which is where that sculpture is of the pilgrim coming out of the tree, to Llangyrnu. And in Llangyrnu churchyard, there's this, they reckon this is 3,000–4,000 years old, this yew tree. It's sort of blasted apart in the center, but grow from several different stems. And it's the most magnificent sight, and humbling really to think it's been there so long. Then across the River Conwy, we head towards Rowen via a little village of Eglwysbach. That's us parking all our shoes and rucksacks outside the church in Eglwysbach, where they always find out when we're coming on our annual pilgrimage, and they prepare the most fantastic tea for us there. So we always love getting to Eglwysbach, and then we can hardly bear to move from there to carry on the rest of the day to get to Rowen. There we are going on towards Rowen, down the Conwy Valley. From Rowen, there's a steep climb up, the path called the Coffin Path. You can see people it goes up very steeply through woodland to begin with, and then up this long path with stone walls on either side, which you can see there in the top right, to the little church of St. Llangellennin. Stopped having services there in about 1824, but it's always open, and it's the most astonishing place. It's a thin place. In the corner of the walled churchyard, there's a walled well as well, which may well have been, was probably used for baptism, and a healing well. It's just a mystical place, and you can get quite lost there. But further on, even more ancient Neolithic stone circles you pass on the top there. Huge amount of history here. There's some the ponies, which are wild on the top. One day when we went and it was drenched, we were drenched with rain as we left the little church of Llangellennin. We were looking for somewhere to shelter. There was a large tree overhanging one of these walls, and we thought we'd go under there, but it was already occupied by 3 ponies and a flock of sheep, so there was no room for us. More stone circles. And then to Abergwyngregin and the falls, the wonderful falls there. There are 2 sets, there's a larger and a smaller set of falls, before heading up over the top towards Bangor, passing Cochwillan Hall, which is an old manor house which has been much restored. It's quite unique. It's got some lovely features on it. From Bangor, we head down the old railway route towards Llanberis to head on the railway route originally, and then head off on footpaths. We originally, when we first did this, came down the coast to Carnarvon, but it followed this tarmac the whole way. And it was extremely tiring, and the trees grew up either side, and you got no view. So we thought we'd change the way we did the route and go down through Llanberis, through magnificent countryside and mountainous countryside and moorland. And it's quite lovely. Each of these sections, each day is about 12 miles on average, some are shorter. The first glimpse of Llynpadar rather, by Llanberis. And after Llanberis, we go up past a little village called Waenfawr, up onto the top towards Moel Smitho, and through this old ruined little community, which we don't know what it was. They say it was just, they abandoned it in the 1920s. But it's quite a unique little place. And then on across moorland towards Avron and Penygroes. And the first sign of arrivals, the 3 rivals, the peaks on the Llyn Peninsula. And this is Clonogh Fawr, St. Bainos, which was a pilgrim church. In fact, I think it had a hospital in the early days where pilgrims could rest and be restored. And there's a new project by Bangor Diocese to do some work with it and possibly even have some pilgrim accommodation housed in the tower. So I do hope that comes on within a fairly short space of time. It would be lovely to have that again open as a place of rest for pilgrims. Inside, it's the most beautiful, airy, ancient church. It's lovely. One of the variant routes we can take, if the tide is out, is to leave the path at Ystymlach here and go down the coast towards Trefor. And then up above Trefor, going across the bulk of the rivals, with the most splendid views, both north and south. It's breathtaking, well, literally breathtaking. It's quite a steep climb to get up there, but once you're there, it is quite wonderful. And then another little church dedicated to St. Baino at Pistich, at the other side of the rivals there. And the floor is always strewn with straw and flowers, and it just smells of hay. It's just a beautiful, again, a beautiful little place to set a time aside of quiet before carrying on your journey. Then, mostly along the North Wales Coast Path, from Nevin we go to Tidwaliog, stopping for a cup of coffee or refreshments at the Red Inn. and it's just beautiful on the coast there. Down to Whistling Sands, so called because of the squeak the sound makes as you walk across it. And there is, thankfully, you get there about tea time on a normal day, a cafe at the end, which is a most welcome rest stop. And from Whistling Sands across country to Aberdaron. And then we usually arrive in Aberdaron, having set off on a Saturday from D-side. We usually get to Aberdaron on Thursday night. And on Friday, we book a boat with Colin the boatman. His number is in the guidebook and on the website, to go across to Aberdaron. Only 1 year, the weather's been too bad for us to go. He won't take you if there's a chance you can't come back. But that lovely quote from R.S. Thomas says, "An island there's no going to, but in a small boat the way the saints went." And Alan is about the 3rd generation of boatmen going across there. And it's called the Island of Tides, unessentially in Welsh, and because of the cross currents between the island and the mainland. And it really would have been quite a feat to get across in a little rowing boat or coracle. There's the ancient abbey that was on the 12th century abbey, which was on the island, the ruins of it, and seen with the 19th century chapel built by Lord Newburgh for the residents in the foreground. There's Roger, one of our pilgrims, looking out to sea from the coast, looking every inch the pilgrim. Pererin, this is a little boat on the island. Pererin is Welsh for pilgrim. And this lovely quote from Little Gidding: "With the drawing of this love and the voice of this calling, we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time."